Right. Welcome to episode 4.
Oh yeah, cuatro. I don't know what this is.
It's just a tradition we got going on. So today's episode, we thought we'd spice it up a little bit. Spice. We're going to be going through a dilemma that one of you have sent us in. We'll hopefully be given some good advice and just sharing our experience on the topic mostly. Just to help you out a little bit, maybe help you feel a little bit less alone. And it's on the topic of friendships. So let's get into it. You asked, any advice on feeling left out and feeling like you don't have a solid group of friends? I feel like I'm not really part of anything because I don't fit into any friendship group. Reading that made me sad.
Yeah, that made me really sad as well.
It made me feel like little me,
Yeah. Yeah.
Or how I used to feel about friendships. Because I've been in big friendship groups and then I've been in like one-on-one friendships and I feel like I've experienced it all, and the bigger your circle, the more drama. It's just so, it happens every single time. So I just learnt my lesson that just because you have more people around you, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good thing. And it might look great from the outside. I think I just learned that just because things look good on the outside doesn't mean it actually is that great.
You've touched on a really important point there, like being seen to be happy. And then I guess in the context of friendships, I think what distorts a lot of things, and what distorted a lot of things for me, was like needing to be seen as someone who was very well liked, and liked so much so that I had this massive group of friends and everyone I met fell in love with me, and not in love with me, but liked me enough to keep me around. And like that, the need for that feeling made me feel worse about something I didn't necessarily even want in the first place. Because I've been similar, probably up until now. I have never had like a girl group, and I used to feel really bad about that.
See,
for a long time.
I think I had girl groups, but I was like the least favorite. I had different stages. Like, so when I was really young, I was in a group of girls that I just knew I was the one that didn't fit in. I knew they didn't like me, but I was still like part of the group in some weird, toxic way.
Yeah. They needed you.
No, I felt like I needed them more than they needed me. I think it was that kind of situation where I needed friends and I really liked them. I think I just liked them more than they liked me. And it sounds so sad saying that, but I think that's just the reality of it.
But you liked the idea of them.
I think I just thought like,
did you think they were amazing people, or did you just feel really good about the fact that you were in this group?
I don't know, because they were like, it's when you're at school, there's like the cliques. I think this is what the girl is referring to. Is like, there's groups of people already formed. And especially for me, I was always the new girl. I was always the one that had to infiltrate because we moved around so much. So there was already fully formed groups and I had to kind of find which one I fit in. Because when you're a kid, like, you just want to have fun. Like, you just want people that kind of have the same interests as you or like the same things as you. But realistically, I didn't fit in with anyone. It was just like pick the best of a bad bunch.
Yeah.
When you leave school and when you get out into the big bad world, you realise that those groups they're meaningless.
Yeah, they mean absolutely nothing.
Yeah, they literally mean nothing. And it's so funny that because even when I transitioned from school life, because even sixth form was very school-like everyone was still in high school mentality. So I never really felt like college was my turning point. It was university. And there's no such thing as a hierarchy or like groups so much as uni. I didn't feel. There's just too many people. Yeah. I feel like at school you're so limited to the people that you're around and the different groups that you can fit into. And if you don't, you feel like such an outsider, such like a weirdo. But realistically, it's not odd for you to not fit in.
Yeah.
I feel like we forget that. And when you're in that situation, it's so hard to realise that even if you don't fit in with everyone around you, it does not make you weird. It doesn't make you.
It doesn't make you weird at all. And actually, what I've realized about growing up is I also had this like very desperate need to fit in when I was in school, as most young people do. But I promise you, the moment you leave school, or the moment you leave like that school environment, everybody's trying their best to not fit in. Like I found that now, it's like no one really. That's not the goal. I think it's just the phase of life that this person's in, is like everyone else is trying to fit in, everyone else does fit in like literally physically into these like little groups at school, and it's like creates that pressure for you to do that as well. But it's not, I don't even think it's a natural human thing to like fit in. I actually hate that phrase as well because it encourages like you being the same as someone else, or you not having more value or like more unique qualities than someone else. And that's just the furthest thing probably from the truth anyway.
The solution isn't to figure out a way to fit in.
Yeah.
The solution is to figure out how to be comfortable in the fact that you don't.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, you can't fit into like every group. And I think in a school setting, which is why I'm assuming this person's in school, I have no idea, but I think it's a lot harder to take that advice on when you're in a school setting because you get lonely very quickly. Like, who are you going to hang around with and the times you're not in lessons, or like how are you going to make that fun school experience, or how are you going to make those like childhood memories if you don't feel like you have any like solid group around you? Even in my adulthood, you know, like we were talking about earlier, how because we've moved around so much, there's never been a childhood best friend, like a friend that I've had since birth.
Yeah.
There's people that actually have friends since they were toddlers, or their parents were friends, or they've just had lifelong friends that they know are their ride or dies.
Yeah.
And people that have gone through everything with them, and the people that are basically like extended family to them, but they're not blood related. And it's like, that's very common to people, but it's also such a foreign concept to me because I've never experienced that.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've always longed for. And that's also what I always looked for in friendships. It's like, oh, if I know someone for X amount of time, they must be really, like a really great friend.
The length of service.
Yeah. Almost. I genuinely like define friendship by that, which is also so wrong.
Yeah, it is.
You can't define friends by like how long you've known someone. And I've also learned that just by like, people don't always treat you based on like what they've been through with you, or like the fact that they've been with you a certain period of time. It's just based on like their character and like how they value you as a person.
Yeah. Which
like time doesn't really play a factor in that, I don't think.
No. Well, time doesn't, and that's like something I've learned recently. And I was the same as you. I was like, the length of service determines how good a friend is. And then it would hurt that extra little bit more if that friendship didn't work out, or if it didn't actually last through all these different phases of life that you go through because of the length of time you've been friends with them. But equally, I think when you were talking about, you know, having friends from a really young age, like we were similar, we moved around a lot. I was saying to you earlier, like, it'd be cool to introduce someone and be like, I've known this person since I was 4.
Yeah.
And I probably do know someone since I was 4, but I just don't know who they are. But I think people having that, or at least in general, having whether it's a support system, friends, family, extended family, anything like that, something that you value outside of whatever current environment you're in, I think that also takes a lot of pressure away from needing to fit in like a certain specific environment. Like, I'm imagining if someone was in school and they were struggling to find their place in the crowd, but they had these support systems outside of school, the struggle inside school wouldn't matter so much. Like, it wouldn't seem like the world was ending, and it wouldn't seem like they were so lonely because school day ends at 3:00.
Yeah.
And like, you're off to do your own thing with.
And you have so much holiday time and like time out of it. I definitely agree. I think if you are fine, because everyone wants to fit in. I think that's never something that goes away. Like, you want to find your people. You want to find people that feel like home and that you can relate to and that you can have fun times with and make memories with. Like, everyone wants that. And I think, like, I don't think it's a bad thing to want that. No. But I almost feel like, don't ever force yourself to fit in with a group just for the sake of having that company.
Yeah.
Like, just make active efforts to find it elsewhere. Like, there's not going to be, like, I think the mistakes I've made in the past is changing myself and like changing how I was, or just trying to like people please to get that validation and like get approved by that group. And I just don't think that is sustainable, first of all, because it's not really truly who you are. And then second of all, I feel like you just end up making yourself so unhappy when you're just constantly trying to like keep up these expectations. It's the expectations thing of, you're just going to get so exhausted by like putting up this front, or like trying to be something you're not. Yeah. There's beauty in just accepting that you're not for everybody. And I think something I struggled with was when I was younger. And I think to an extent now is like, I kind of forget, like, there's this Eminem quote that's like, there's a problem if you don't have enemies, like, because then you don't stand for anything. Like, if you're not like sharing your true opinion, there's always going to be like an opposing opinion. But if there's no one disagreeing with you, then that's a red flag, because then you're not really sharing like your genuine thoughts on something.
Yeah.
But I always used to I would just like sway whichever way because I just wanted to be accepted. But I think it's not really good for your own like self-development to like live like that.
Yeah.
And it's not, and it doesn't mean that you're a bad person or like you're weird or you're the odd one out. It just means that those people aren't right for you. There'll be other people that are. You just got to go find them and focus on that and don't focus on where you don't fit.
Yeah.
I think that's the important part.
Yeah, I think you've said two really important things there. Like the first one being, if you don't stand, well, like you say, like if you don't have these opinions or you just kind of people please your way through life. We touched on this in a previous episode. You end up not really knowing who you are
It's
because
like if you
live for
stand for
other
everything,
people.
you stand for nothing. I
Yeah,
think
that's exactly it. Yeah, you stand for nothing. And if you stand for nothing, like, who are you? How do you make a decision in a restaurant? Like, what are your likes and dislikes? Like, you know yourself less the more you're people pleasing for other people. So there's that point of like, it would be great to not fit in because the less you fit in, the more you know yourself. And the more you know yourself, the happier you're going to be overall through life anyway, because you're going to have less quarter life crises.
Yeah.
And the second thing is like your friends and people who get you and people who click with you are not all going to come from one place. I think that's really important to emphasize. I thought my lifelong friends were going to come from my school years. And that's why I used to get so upset that I moved around so much, because I was like, I don't have those like rooted
grounded
friends. Like everyone's always someone new. But the reality of the fact is that I have all these amazing friends from different chapters of my life. And they're still my friends because I met them, I get on with them, I clicked with them. And at one point in my life, we were very close. And like, just because that hasn't stayed through now, I can't take away from that friendship because like life changes and you can't keep that same state of friendship that you had with one person throughout. Whatever you end up going through, whatever they end up going through, you should like appreciate things and chapters of your life for what they are. So if that chapter is, okay, so there's not many people I click with right now, that's just a chapter of maybe getting to know yourself better, looking inward, standing up for yourself, like having opinions. And then the next chapter of your life, that will make that chapter easier to actually find people, especially if then you're like thrust into the real world. And if you know yourself better, you're going to attract people that you actually like as well.
I think that's a big thing. I think when you have low self-esteem and you're really insecure about yourself, you almost attract people that like feed off that and like make you feel worse and like almost take advantage of you.
Or are the same.
Yeah, and just like you just end up making each other feel worse. But it ultimately, I think you're right. And I think at some point I did stop craving that girl group. I feel like a lot of us, when we're younger, we do crave like this like group that are going to do everything together and like we're going to plan all these things. And I think that is a very like common like dream for a lot of girls to have like that dream friendship. But the reality of the matter is that for some people, they're lucky to have that and they have that like growing up. But in my experience, there's always been so much drama that comes out of the group. So I almost have learned to not desire that because you're constantly, even if you are in a group and then like two people fall out because you can't control of everyone else, but then you're automatically involved in that. And like, how do you navigate two friends that are falling out? And there's just a lot more drama, I think, that comes out of it. Whereas if you, like you said, like you make your friends individually and like just through stages of your life naturally, and you don't put so much emphasis on having to have all these people come together and like make this big happy group, I think you end up a lot happier and more secure in your friendships because you know you're with them because, not because so-and-so is friends with them and you're kind of mutual and like you've made this random group, but because you know you have a direct relationship. Because a lot of the time what happens is when you're in a friendship group, it's because you're friends with one person, but they're also friends with someone else. And then that person is also friends with someone else. But you're not actually close to the other two girls. You're close to this friend, but you've all kind of come together in this group because you're mutuals rather than like you all actually equally like each other. That's what happens a lot too. So unless you end up in a group like that, I just don't think the friendship groups just don't seem desirable to me. And I think even in adult life, like people have issues, like whatever stage of life they're in, like there's always the likelihood of getting yourself into toxic friendships or relationships, like no matter what age you are. Like I think it's more common when you're young, but it definitely happens when you're grown too.
Yeah.
Some people don't grow up.
Well, yeah, some people don't grow up, which causes that. But I think it's just also like the friends you make when you're younger. You have to remember you're making your friend, like especially school friends, your friends when you have like no specific interests. You go to school all day, you like mess around in your free periods, and then that's it. You maybe like go to the cinemas or like whatever else I used to do after school. I can't really remember what I did after school. But then like in adult life, people are, or maybe also in like in your teens and your childhood as well, but there are so many different things that people go through that completely change friendship dynamics, like weddings, deaths, births, like all these different things completely change friendships with people. Like I've heard so much, and more recently as well, thinking that there's like loads of TikTok dilemmas that go viral about like weddings breaking up friendships and like being bridesmaids and like maid of honors and the smallest things about like maybe bridezillas, friendship, like ending decade-long friendships because of things like that. And you just never know, I think. And it's therefore I think quite wrong to base an entire friendship on like one chapter of life, or like an entire opinion of someone and reliance and trust in someone on one chapter of life. I think you should just, that's why I just think you should appreciate like people for the period in which you know them and like their character and how they behave. I think there's also like with that, I think you should also separate like how much happiness you actually get from friendships versus how much like maybe not happiness but fulfillment you get from friendships versus fulfillment you get from like your own life.
Yeah.
But to be my own devil's advocate, what I also struggle with is like people, and I'm definitely getting that more recently, but people getting so much fulfillment, happiness, and pure joy out of their like female friendships, especially women. Well, obviously women only. And this also comes to mind this TikTok video I saw absolutely ages ago, but it was this girl and she was talking about her mum, and her mum went through a divorce, and it was basically like a little tribute to her mum's like best friends. And she was basically saying that her mum has had like the best like decade of her life post-divorce because of all these amazing friends that she had. And it made me think like, will I have that when I'm older? Like, will I have these like really precious like female friendships that I wouldn't give up for anything? There's a lot, obviously loads of friendships now that I wouldn't give up for anything, but I feel like to last that long is like, it's just a bit crazy to me.
I feel like it's things like that that make you really crave that like connection, especially when you talk about weddings. Something that comes to mind a lot for me is like when I see girls and their million bridesmaids, I'm like, can't relate. Like, who will that be? I have like, I could count my friends on one hand. Like, it's just not, it's not obtainable for everyone. But I also think that it's not necessarily a bad thing that you, it's hard because like with the whole, like when you're older and you go through something like traumatic and you have your support system, a lot of the time you kind of need a support system outside of the family because like when things like that happen, who do you turn to? You turn to your friends. So it is hard to think that like the advice is never to just like live without it, because I think we all need that connection and that like people to relate to, people to have those memories and fun times with, like outside of familial relationships. But it's also, I think, just important to not put the pressure on it, because like by putting pressure and stress on the fact that I can't have 10 bridesmaids, like what's that gonna do?
Yeah.
Like, I can't do anything about that. I'm not just gonna go pick people off the street just because I need to have like 10 people. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, well, the world doesn't work like that. I think you just have to focus on the fact that you put yourself out there, like you make the effort to meet new people.
I think that's important.
Yeah.
I think that's important to talk about, because there's probably a balance to strike between like, okay, looking inward, standing up for yourself, having opinions, not being a doormat, therefore attracting the people you like, but also making that effort to find friends or find people that you like, which I appreciate can be actually very difficult in adulthood. I know friends who've moved to like new cities, new countries, moved jobs, whatever it is, and have struggled to like find connection, like meaningful connection wherever they are. And that kind of emphasizes the loneliness. And it kind of probably brings back those feelings of like do I fit in? Because now I'm in a massive city full of like millions of people and I still can't find friends.
Yeah.
So I guess, I don't know if I'm coming to a resolution with this point, because yeah, there is a balance to strike between making effort and then also appreciating that effort once you've made it. Like, you can't expect people to just come to you. I guess in the same way, like, these can all be applied to romantic relationships as well. If you want to find a life partner, are you going to sit and wait for it
you
to come
have to
to
put
you?
yourself out there in like the dating world if you want to date someone. The same way, like, if you want friends, you got to make yourself known. Like, you've got to like put like your own effort into trying to make that happen and not be a recluse.
Yeah.
But it is hard because
It's hard.
you almost feel like, especially when you get to a certain age, so I'm talking like when you're in your 20s, for example, you almost have this impression that everyone's already got their friends. Like,
Yeah.
everyone's already have their friendship group. Like, I'm intruding. Like, if I try and make friends now, I'm like, but are they going to see me as a genuine friend compared to the friends that they've had since they were 4? Do you know what I mean? I almost feel like, not that it's a competition, but you struggle with feeling like you're as much of a valued friend, even if you make it later on in life, which I think is quite a difficult thing to also like add to the list of barriers of like making friends when you're older. I definitely think it's so much harder when you get older to make new friends because there's just not as many opportunities that come up that are natural.
Yeah.
You can just stumble across like a new person and just hit it off like straight away, like and just immediately know that you are compatible.
Yeah. I feel like growing up also brings to the surface more insecurities as well. So then I'm like,
When you're on your journey of healing and you're like everything is pouring out of you and then
Exactly,
you're
yeah.
trying to like have this love come back. It's hard.
it's super hard. Like, I feel like the version of me that was at uni, or like my university self, I feel like they could easily make friends because they were so confident. I'm talking about myself like I died, but
But it is like a different version.
Yeah,
of
it was a
me.
different
I feel
version.
that. Although I was quite shy, but I was very much like ready to mingle. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's what I mean. That's
I was
exactly what I mean.
prepared,
Yeah.
but then now I did that, and then it didn't really work out that well. Like, I had the big friendship group, and it was just a bit like messy, and like I feel like especially when you have big girl groups, like just emotions are always high. Like,
Yeah.
there's always some kind of drama going on. So I kind of realized quite quickly that that's not really what I wanted.
I'm not gonna lie. I think I have like a real fear of like big girl groups. It's obviously never was part of one, and I don't know if it's because I was never part of one that I'm like I never want anything to do with that. But also I don't know if it's also TV and media, they make it seem so like dramatic and like tight knit and like
I like the idea of it being like tight knit though. I think that's what's like fueled the desire, I think, for a lot of people is like seeing those girl groups on TV shows and like they're all so close and like
but then
do everything together.
at the same time I'm like a very low maintenance friend. I think that's also partially why I don't really put myself out. I have not really put myself out there that much, is because I know I can't maintain like high maintenance friendships. I can't call every day. I can't like check in all the time. I'll message you when I'm in your town. I'll make the effort to see you like when it's convenient for both of us. Like, I won't let things fizzle, but I'm very like meaningful and thoughtful about it rather than like popping up every day and like being constantly at the forefront. Like, you can pick up with someone where you left off after like 6 months, which goes by quite quickly these days.
Yeah, in adulthood, yeah.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying about the low maintenance friend. I feel like you become that though as you get older because like life happens, like you become so like when you're adulting, you're figuring out so much. Like, you're trying to like set your own life path and you just got so much going on that I feel like when you're younger, you don't really have that much to think about other than like the friendships you
Just your
have.
friends.
And, do you know what I mean? It's like all about your friends. It's all about like having a fun time. It's all about like trying to like enjoy yourself or like who's friends with who. I feel like it's just very much more like a little bubble.
Honestly, okay, so I know what you mean, but then also, so I listen to true crime a lot, and they'll always sometimes start an episode and it's like someone's gone missing, but they found out that they've gone missing because they stopped texting like their friend for a day, and like they've been reported missing. And I'm like, I sometimes
Is it a friend or a partner?
Well, either or sometimes. Like, sometimes it's literally friends.
No, there's definitely people that like need that constant like I'm going to message you every single day. I'm updating you on what I'm eating for breakfast. Like,
Yeah,
there are those
that.
type of people out there. But I think those people can't handle being alone. Like, there's
Oh my
definitely an
God.
element of, like,
Yeah.
there's an issue. Not like there's a problem
It
with
just
them.
clicked for me.
But they can't go through life alone. There are people like that. Then they rely on their friends, I think, a bit too much.
Do you think those people then are like more uncomfortable actually being alone?
themselves,
Yeah,
yeah.
being themselves.
I think so. I think you get to... There's like different elements to it because it's not like I'm a super confident person, but I definitely like my own company, like a lot. So,
But do you
it
think that
doesn't
was
bother me.
like, is it a byproduct of how you've lived life so far, or do you actually genuinely like being alone?
I think it's a mixture though. I think it's like obviously going through very dramatic friendships and stuff and realizing that like some people thrive off the drama. They actually like it. They almost fuel it. Like that's what they want. And I'm the opposite of that. I'd rather not have those friendships and not deal with all of that. Life is just a lot less dramatic in general when you keep to yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like you just, I don't know. I just like my own company.
I'm the exact
Hard to
same.
explain.
But I think I like my own company because like it's definitely a byproduct of how I've lived so far in terms of like struggling to force myself to fit into groups and struggling
I
to put myself
see.
out there. It's like, okay, so I've had to look inward a bit, but then I'm also introverted at the same time.
I
So
think that's
I'm
a
not
big
like
part, yeah.
extroverted being forced to not be with people. I actually do enjoy it, but then it's a case of like accepting the fact that looking inward and spending time with yourself and being comfortable with yourself is also like quite acceptable. Like you don't need, like you say, that huge friend group. You don't need the drama to, I don't know, be liked or be a good person or whatever is associated with people who have like lots of friends and are very well liked. And
There's a lot of pressure that comes with that as well, I think. Like
oh yeah,
constantly keeping up these relationships with people, even if they're on the surface level.
they'd
I
have
just
to be
feel like-
surface level though.
yeah, I don't have the energy for it, I don't think.
I think it takes more energy to do that with people than to have like
Meaningful.
meaningful, because meaningful means your walls down and just yourself with someone all the time.
And I guess, yeah, you can just be honest. Like, if you don't feel like talking or there's some that kind of thing going on, you can be honest about it. Whereas if you're just trying to appease like multiple different people or like keep these relationships going, but you can't, maybe you don't actually have the capacity to, you still feel like you can't say it, and or you're just going to still keep things at a certain level. That must be really tiring. I just feel like I don't put myself in those situations because I know I couldn't maintain it.
Yeah.
And it is a lot to do with the introvert-extrovert thing. Like, I'm a lot more introverted than extroverted. But at the same time, I'm not saying I don't like people. I think I've given the impression that, like, I hate everybody. Like, leave me alone. I like being around people, but I'm just very... When I decide to call someone a friend, especially at this age, I'm very careful with who I call a friend and who I put my genuine time and effort into.
Yeah.
Because I just don't... I used to be of the impression that everyone I met was my friend.
Yeah.
Like, I was very much a very open... Like, I was just so open with people and so, like... Yeah, if we've, like, exchanged a hi and, like, how are you? Like, you're my friend now. I don't know why. I was just this girl that everyone was a friend to me, but now I'm not.
I used to be like that. If you laughed at my joke, I'd be like,
besties. I was the same. I was so quick to call people friend, best friend. Like, I was that girl, and now I'm like, no.
well, I think, see, I'm like that, but I'm on, it's almost like the opposite, not the opposite, but from a different angle, whereby, okay, so I meet someone, they laugh at my joke. Instead of thinking that, okay, potential to be the bestest of friends here, I'm like, okay, they laughed at my joke because we probably get on some kind of level that's a little bit better than surface. That doesn't mean we're like really good friends, or I have to rely on this person at all, or trust them, or like, you know, put too much faith
it's like
in a friendship.
The tiers of friendship.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
I
Like
feel
understanding
learning
those
that
tiers
has
a bit
been
better.
a game changer for me.
I completely agree.
Understanding that your friends don't all sit on one level. Like, you can, and I think people are aware of it because you have the best friend and then you just have your friends. But it's
Even
more
that
than
I struggle
that.
with. Like, best friend, I don't have one single, maybe like my siblings, but then I don't know if that counts because we're related.
Yeah. Well, I guess you can call your siblings your besties.
This brings me very nicely on to my cup analogy, which I think you've heard before.
I think I have.
But the cup analogy is the perfect way to describe why I think me and you potentially hold people quite highly and then now don't. The cup analogy is, if everyone was a cup, if everyone was a glass, Farah and myself are like tall tumblers. I want to say tumbler is the right glass. And then, for example, if I met someone else, but they were actually
short.
I was going to say a highball, but I think we're the highballs and maybe the other person is the tumbler. Basically, a short glass. Okay, so they're a short glass. I'm trying to get too into glass names here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a tall glass. So for me, as a tall glass, you can fill me up with 500 milliliters of water. And if we take water to be like expectations, like my expectations are this much and I fill it up this much. Therefore, I do that for other people. So you
just like effort.
Effort, yeah. So I put that much effort in. And then so for you as a short glass, I'll put that much effort in. So you as a short glass, you'll be pouring 500 milliliters in. Obviously you're short. You can only take 200. So then that 300 spilling over everywhere else, that's like you being like, this is too much. Like I can't deal with it. Maybe I'm suffocating you with all this effort that I'm pouring in. But for me, it's normal because I'm a tall glass. Mm-hmm. And then it works like the other way around. Like if I'm a short glass, then I'm only pouring a little bit. But if you're a tall glass, you're sitting in a deficit. So then you're like, what is this friendship? They don't need to, they don't do anything.
Do you think that's linked to the high maintenance, low maintenance friend thing?
I think so too.
I think there's like elements of people just have different expectations of what it means to be a friend.
Yeah.
I do always feel like when I like called someone a friend, then my definition of a friend was never actually that deep, like thinking about it. Like in some ways, I don't know if you felt like this, but I think growing up like South Asian, there's always like a limit of what you can share or like tell people. So I feel like there was always I was innately like had this limit of like how much I could share with people. So if I went a little bit beyond that, that's why they were a best friend, because like it was such a big deal to trust people with this much information.
Yeah.
I think that's partly where it comes from, like this, wow, like I felt comfortable enough to share like this inch of my life.
That's so interesting. That's actually so interesting.
So I think I just blew out of proportion how valuable like that sharing or that like...
Well, no, don't put yourself down, because like you didn't blow that out of proportion, because like, if that's a big deal for you, that is a big deal for you. And like...
Well, I mean, if I'm talking in a general sense, like the stuff I would share seemed like so much when actually in reality it was surface level. If you...
No, I think you're putting yourself down. Yeah, I honestly think you're trying to like, you're probably just trying to justify like why certain friendships have been the way they were. But like, if that felt like a lot for you to share, which half the time it is, because I completely agree with like this whole sharing thing. And I did the exact same thing at uni. I used to tell people, and I made a lot of white friends at university. So I felt like I could speak more freely about things. And I used to really value and hold them close because of the fact that I was like, I told them this thing about me that no one really knows. And I felt comfortable to talk about it. And I don't think that was bad at all. Like, I think it's the only thing that's like, okay, maybe I should have realized is that they're not seeing it as a big deal. And I never said it was a big deal. I just, in my head, knew it was a big deal. So you're still allowed to say that, like, you know, I held these people closely because of what they knew about me, because of how much I trusted them with this information. But at the same time, I didn't communicate that. So it's fine if that wasn't like, that those feelings weren't like two-way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that. I think it's more like just like a friendship definition thing than anything else. Like the point is that people define their friendships in different ways, I think, but nobody really communicates that. Nobody really like
no one says
like, this is what a friendship means to me and what it looks like, but then you automatically just figure that out by becoming friends, and then you kind of act in your own ways which define what you think is friendship, and then whether that matches, then great, but sometimes it doesn't match, and then you're like, oh, Oops. Okay, moving on.
Yeah. I think communicating thing is really hard.
It is hard to go up to someone and be like, yeah, especially when you're like, because I feel like when you're becoming friends with someone, you're still like getting to know them all the time. So
All the
at
time,
what point do you say, by the way, this is what I expect from you as my friend? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not going to come up really unless you're like really deep.
Yeah,
But then,
or unless you're really like blunt and upfront.
Yeah.
Just naturally, which probably a lot of people are. I thought I was quite blunt. I think I am quite blunt sometimes. But then there's some things I would struggle to like communicate, especially with like something I'd want in a friendship. Or is there anything that you've struggled with in terms of, okay, it would have been nice if my friends did this, but then all I had to do was ask?
Yeah, this is the thing. I don't like asking.
But that's the thing as well. I'm
like, if you're not going to do it, then don't do it. But I ain't going to ask you to do it.
But then what's the line between like, okay, if you were a nice person, you would do this without me asking, but then also, would you need to ask? And also, are you just a short glass?
But I wouldn't consider someone like a bad friend if they didn't like, if they don't meet my expectations in the sense that, they don't like post how proud they are of me or like share my stuff. I wouldn't necessarily consider them a bad friend. I would be disappointed and be like, I would have done that for you. But I feel like it does take a lot for me to be like, you're messed up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it takes me a lot for like to have a reason to cut someone off or like decide that they're not a good friend or I don't want to have a relationship with them anymore. And things like, yeah, there are expectations that I would have just based on the things that I would do for other people. But if some people don't meet those expectations, I'm not automatically... I'm a bit disappointed, but I don't think I really raised that with them. Like, I'm not... Because I have the standards, but I don't hold people to them as much.
Do you think that's bad, though? Because I was about to say, like, does the disappointment detract from the friendship? Like, you know how we were talking about tears? Yeah. Like, would a disappointment tear down someone?
I think to an extent, yeah. I think that was what would happen, is that you just... Because if I value you as, like, quite a high-tiered friend, but you don't act in that way, then you just move down a level. So there'd be, like, a bit of distance there. Or, like, we would just be more of, like, acquaintances rather than, like, super close. Or it would depend on the situation. There's, like, levels of disappointment you can feel, I think, for certain things.
The disappointments have tears.
Yeah, they do.
This is a tier 2 disappointment. So you're going to be demoted to friendship level 2. I saw a really interesting TikTok about this, and it was basically this girl started her TikTok, and because she started her TikTok, she got really into like content creation and like the TikTok world and social media and all this stuff, right? And she was saying that she's found it really easy to like weed out fake friends or not fake friends, that's very heavy and mean. She's found it easy to weed out people who aren't maybe real friends because of the fact that she does social media now, and because it's TikTok, it's public, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, you can't be friends with this person without knowing that they do this thing. Like, it's not a secret. And she was saying that like some friends would outwardly, like in front of her, like bash social media or like content creation or like some element of it. Like they'd be like, not outwardly saying that being a content creator is bad or that it's embarrassing or whatever. They would just bash like social media in general. They would just say, oh, it's so bad for humanity.
I think I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I've seen similar videos where people that are trying to make their pages, they have friends that are like, oh, I could never do social media. Like, it's so like strange, or like to put yourself out there or share stuff. But they have a friend that's doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, why are you saying that?
Right. And she was basically saying like, it's really mean and rude to know what your friend values, but then put that down in front of them. It's like very disrespectful almost. And she was saying it's really weird because some of these people that were putting it down were like really good friends, and she was thinking, well, how are you expecting me to feel in the moment while you're putting this thing down that I love?
What's the motive?
Yeah, what's the motive in doing that? And it was really interesting because in the comments they were talking about like, okay, well, what if this person is actually just passionate about a social media free life, yet you're a content creator? How are they supposed to respect it? But then in my head, I'm thinking, if you have a friend who has a set of values and those values don't align with yours, then maybe you aren't like that good friends.
Yeah.
It's like a Tory being friends with.
Well, if it's down to your core values, then yeah, there's a problem there, because
Yeah.
I don't really think you can be friends with someone that, at the core, that you genuinely
You have a huge disagreement.
very opposing opinions on like important things.
Yeah.
Not to say that like liking social media or not is that important, but I guess if it's like they're making it a core value that they live this tech-free life, and they like
that's the example being like, I've used the example badly there, but do you get what I'm trying to say?
But do you not think that people almost convince themselves sometimes that they are good friends with people when they're actually not?
Yeah, they probably hold
like
on.
I've done that before.
Well, maybe it's things like length of service, or like this friend like maybe did something really great for you a long time ago, and you've held on to it, or maybe you feel indebted to someone, or there's so many different reasons that it makes it easier to sometimes hold on to like versions of people, like other people, rather than like, because we spoke about the different versions of yourself, but then there's also different versions of other people.
That's so true. It's like, yeah, they were this great person and we like really gelled. I guess it's kind of like in a relationship, like a romantic relationship. People talk about growing apart, but you don't really think about that in a friendship setting. Like when people are growing and they're changing all the time, but you almost hold on to the version that made you friends in the first place, even though that might not be the case anymore. And you still value them as you call them the good friend. But then if their values have changed so much that you both are like opposing opinions on really important things, then I guess it's compatibility as well. Like you're just not compatible anymore.
If you compare that to like being in a romantic relationship, you don't have to go through this like horrible breakup and stuff. It's so much easier to manage friendships that waver in like closeness or meaningfulness or whatever the right word is there, but it's so much easier to manage those.
Do you think it's quite easy to just like let go of a friend if you like decide this ain't for me anymore?
I don't know. I think there's a line between thinking, okay, this person isn't for me anymore, because then I think then you're making that distinction that like, okay, this person like maybe taking away from my life. Whereas when I talk about wavering friendships, I talk about like just not holding people so closely anymore. It's like that friendship doesn't need to end.
Like fizzle.
Well, even fizzling, like there's fizzling. I've had fizzling, but ending is, I feel like it's so dramatic, and like I feel like it needs to be a serious reason why a friendship would need to end.
But how do you fizzle? So do you just go from like talking regularly to like not so much, or like then even less, and then a point where you just don't talk at all?
I think fizzling for me has come from like friendships that are just like, there's no way to maintain it anymore, and I'll just let it fizzle. So
it's not like something's happened then you're like, actually this is not good friendship, or this is like there'll be a couple of fizzles. A couple of the fizzles I've been like, this person has disappointed me, but in a way that, how we were talking about like expectations. So I initially did put too much expectation on, but then I did communicate it, and it was actually not reciprocated. And I thought that was a little bit disrespectful. So then I thought, okay, I'm going to fizzle this friendship because there's nothing. Yeah.
There's nothing there. But it wasn't like anything personal to me. It also wasn't anything personal to the other person. I don't even think either of us has realized it's fizzled. But I actively put less effort in, because when I put effort, I put effort. Like this is what I mean. Like I don't have surface level friendships. I do... Like I'm an acts of service girly. Like I do a lot. I'm like very thoughtful. And then if it's a fizzler, those parts of me aren't there, which means I'm not there. So I guess it is kind of like ending.
It is ending, yeah.
But then for the other person, it won't seem, because nothing's been said, nothing's been done. It's just more like, instead of messaging like a nice heartfelt happy birthday, it'll just be like a reply to story or something. Do you know what I mean?
You know what? I find it so uncomfortable, that stage of things, when you're like, you are that person that would make a lot of effort, like for a birthday or something, and then you go to just writing a happy birthday note.
It actually does hurt like a little bit, because I know how close I used to be with some people, and like when it goes from like these really like well thought out birthday presents and really like lovely birthday
That's why
messages.
I can't do fizzling though, because I'm like, I'm not wishing you. Like, it just becomes like, because it's almost, I'm doing it for the sake of, like, I don't really mean it. Like, I'm not there for your birthday. I'm not making an effort. So
I kind of relate in terms of, I'm not going out of my way to reply to a story. If I see it's a story and if I see it's your birthday, I'll reply, because I don't think I've ever scrolled past like our birthday post and not been like, happy birthday.
Even people I don't know. I'm like,
exactly. Literally, I do. Yeah, because I hate the thought of like scrolling past something that like asks for a response like that, and it's going to take me 2 seconds to write it, and it means a lot to the other person. Most of the time, it's nice to be wished happy birthday.
Yeah.
So like, I'll never do that, but I won't go out of my way
to go find it.
Yeah, to go message and stuff like that, because that's not something that's done back. But the fact that I'm aware that it's not done back, I'm like still holding on to things and taking things personally. So it's probably still not healthy.
We got some work to do.
We've got loads of work to do.
Does that bring us to a close?
That brings us to a close.
I hope I think we went on a bit of a tangent, but I hope the initial point or like the advice that we gave was helpful. I know it's really hard navigating friendships. I think it's super hard. Don't think you get to any age where you feel like you've nailed it.
Example 1, example 2.
Yeah, that's all you need, really. Proof is in the pudding.
We're the pudding.
Every chapter of your life ends at some point. You can reinvent yourself at any point as well. I feel like we forget that. But you don't have to be feeling like you don't fit in. And I think that's the most important part, is like taking the pressure off you trying to fit in a box, and just trying to enjoy and make the most of the time that you have in whatever stage of life that you're in.
And don't forget to leave us a little review if you're listening on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts.
And give us a little like on YouTube if you're watching us over there.
A like and a comment if you're feeling...
Yeah, let us know what your experiences with friendships are, because...
Oh my God, yeah.
Have you know it's a common issue.
If you have a girl group, we'd love to hear from you. Like, what is it like?
How did you do it? How do you maintain it?
Top 5 tips.
We would love that.
And yeah, let us know what you think about this dilemma format, because we think it's a really nice way to like connect with you guys. Yeah, and get you guys involved, and also just, you can just join in the complaining with me and Farah, to be honest, as well, if you want.
Join the conversation.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you for listening, and we will be back next week.
Bye.
Bye.